I call the Honourable Member Jan Logie. Tēnā koe, Ms Logie.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. The Green Party has a long tradition in this House of advocating for employment law and a social security system that provides everyone with enough income to fully participate in their community and to live safe, healthy lives. We support policies that are sufficient to ensure this, simple to understand and access, universal in their application, and equitable within a wider social context. We will be opposing this bill today as it is not consistent with these values or vision. This bill will, we believe, further stigmatise the most marginalised people in this country. It will remove some of the leniency that exists within the system, which will result in less money in the hands of the poorest New Zealanders. And it will treat debtors to MSD more harshly than debtors within other parts of our system and our society. I would like, though, to acknowledge the Minister who has brought this bill for taking the time to talk with me through this bill and allow us access to officials as well to discuss our concerns and check out our position properly. This bill makes a range of changes to accountability and culpability for benefit fraud and debt recovery by the Ministry of Social Development, including imposing a new obligation on MSD to take all reasonably practical steps to recover debt, and that is a very important point. And it allows the Minister of Social Development to issue directions on when they may temporarily defer debt repayment and what MSD can take into account when setting the rate and method of debt recovery. Currently, this is the responsibility of MSD, so it's shifting that from within the agency with the knowledge and experience and moving it into the political realm. In terms of debt, this will enable MSD to be able to hold partners of beneficiaries liable when benefit fraud is committed. And it will allow the recovery of up to 3 times the amount paid in excess in cases of fraud. And it introduces a new offence of partners knowingly or recklessly benefiting from fraud committed by their partner, punishable by up to $5,000 fine or 12 months imprisonment. And it introduces a new system for working with people who have been decided to have been dishonest with MSD in the past, regardless of whether they have a conviction or not. Now, I really need to put these changes in context for those considering the bill and to point out that 2/3 of debt that MSD recovers is not a result of fraud. So when we're hearing in this House that this is about fraud, actually 2/3 of the system is about debt, not fraud. Much of it is a result of administratively created overpayment that our Labour colleague Jacinda Ardern, I think, quite clearly articulated how that happens. The interface between beneficiaries who are working part-time and reporting that work and the systems through IRD. It's actually often just about a mismatch of those systems rather than any intent at all. In fact, most of these people in this situation, it is absolutely not in their interest to end up with a debt or an overpayment, and they would much prefer to avoid that situation. But our system doesn't work to enable that. Also, what is recorded as debt in the system is often from advances given to people to pay for some of the absolute essentials in life, including things like fridges, dishwashers, washing machines, tampons, food, sanitary pads, absolute basic essentials is part of what we're talking about when we're talking about this bill and the recovery of debt. It's also, I think, important in the context of this to recognise that beneficiaries are routinely being denied their legal entitlements. This debt pretends that's not the case. Auckland Action Against Poverty are seeing an emerging gatekeeper culture within work and income. And they've reported that people are often being told now no as the first response from work and income staff. And that at least 9 out of 10, at least 9 out of 10 of people that their advocates work with have been incorrectly or unfairly denied assistance. This is from those people being misinformed about their entitlements, whether it be a special needs grant, whether it be their eligibility for a benefit to begin with, or whether it be about coverage for disability costs or extra assistance for food, a huge range of things. And we're hearing these reports all over the country. And this raises the question of why is this happening? Because we've been hearing these stories for a while and they're increasing. And there does seem to me to be a pattern. This government and the one before it have focused their attention on saving money from the budget. The latest law changes that we've seen have stigmatised beneficiaries further, sending the message that they're job-avoiding, drug-taking, poor parents and criminals. You can't send those messages and not have them influence staff and organisational culture. Further, the legislation is far too complicated. It's been amended 131 times, includes 422 sections, 31 schedules, and there are 50 policies that are at the discretion of the CE of MSD rather than being enshrined in the law. This makes this so hard for staff to know what people are actually entitled to. Now, you combine that with a loss of funding to so many of the benefits rights organisations who are able to provide advocacy for people going into this system, the cuts to legal aid for beneficiaries wanting to appeal their lack of entitlement. And we have a very dangerous system where the most vulnerable people in this country are having the food taken out of their mouths or the tampons or in their trolleys illegally taken off them through a lack of entitlement. The government, and yet the government's focus is to bring this bill, which is focused on the recovering of the debt from the few people that have managed to get their entitlements to be able to feed their children, to be able to have a fridge in their house. This is not about criminality, Mr. Sabin. This is about debt that is created through inefficient systems and people being ripped off by the system. And the government choosing to focus rather on a very small group of people and not its own actions, which I would suggest is where the most harm is being done. I will note that there is an aspect of this bill that the Greens do support around or are interested in hearing more around in relation to fraud. And that is, which is a small percentage of what we're actually talking about. But that is where the relationship fraud, and I do note Dr. Rajin Prasad's contribution, but I would note from having worked in Women's Refuge, I've seen so many cases of women being threatened by their partner, that their partner would dob them in to work and income. And I do see that this provision of sharing the consequences of any dobbing in will have an impact that will be very positive for those women, that this may no longer be able to be used as a tool by those abusers, and that is a very positive aspect of this bill that we do support. However, The fraud investigation system is still quite fraught. Speaking with officials, the evidence they're using is often unsubstantiated, and we are hearing from women in violent relationships that they are often persecuted through this system. We do not support this bill.
Speaker.
I call the honourable member Melissa Lee, Anyang